He's the author of the very famous Who Are You, America, which reveals the descendants of Israel in America through our signs in America, and the heraldry that was in Europe became certain symbols on our currency and in our government. And so a great book I highly recommend to everyone. He's also the author of Christian and Jews, The Two Faces of Israel, The Unveiling of the Mysteries of the Kingdom. Very important book. This is a book that you can read and reread. And then he has a two-part series called A Game-Changing Revelation, The Hidden Ancestry of America and Great Britain. And so what we've decided this morning is to treat you to something that he's never spoken to anyone before. He's not only going to go into Who Are You, America, but he's going to introduce it with a new teaching that he has about how King David's throne and the blessing that was to be upon that throne has never ended, and how it continues to this day in England. And we want to give him a warm Wenatchee welcome. Amen? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Here's your...
Hello, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege to be here. It's a joy to be here. And Isaac is my blood brother.
Amen.
Yeah. His fame went before him, long before I got to meet him. And look what he's accomplished. So much. Wonderful to be here with him and with you. So here we are, Mount Zion, the camp of Israel, all around the tabernacle, showing the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud. We're going to talk about that pillar of fire and that pillar of cloud a little later, because it also, believe it or not, features in American heraldry. And you know, American heraldry is all coming from the words that Jacob spoke over the 12 tribes, over his 12 sons. As he was dying, he spoke those words, which are all recorded for posterity in Genesis 49, chapter 49. And those amazing words covering each and every one of his sons, which were to grow into independent tribes who were all allotted their own independent territory in the land of Israel by Joshua, the son of Nun. He wasn't the son of a nun, by the way. He was just the son of Nun, which is his father. We are going to look at some of this about King David, because King David had our Father in heaven established a royal line with the descendants of King David. And the promise was given that the house of David would always have a descendant seated, wait for it, seated on the throne of Israel, not on the throne of Judah, the throne of Israel. And that's a very important key. Now, come on, boy. There we are. Now, I've got a text here which I can't read from here, but you have it up there. I'm going to have to stand and read it to you. Israel was to become a great nation. These are the 12 signs that demonstrate the main characteristics that will identify the lost tribes of Israel today. And not many people know that. Now, I've just chosen 12. There are many, many more. I've just chosen the key ones. The first one, Israel was to become a great nation. The Israelites were to reassemble in a new home. Israel was to inhabit islands and coastlands located northwest of Jerusalem. Israel was to become a nation and a company of nations, or a commonwealth of nations. Israel was to become a military superpower. Israel was to possess the gates of her enemies. Israel was to acquire great wealth and become an economic giant. Israel was to have a large population. Israel was to be a royal kingdom. Israel was to be recognized by the emblems of a lion and a unicorn. And Israel, the Israelites, were to be unaware of their true origins. And Israel's birthright inheritance was to be deferred. And all those are backed up with scriptures, and I've only cited some key scriptures, but there is tons more to back these 12 signs up. And in a way, it's like if you had to go into a courtroom and you had to defend the premise that America is an Israel nation, a Hebrew nation, well then you could call these 12 witnesses before the court and prove from each of these 12 witnesses that the United States of America is an Israel nation. In fact, the United States of America in Hebrew is called Hasot Avot, which means covenant of the states, right? And in Britain, the Britain means Brit Am, the people of the Brit, the people of the covenant. That is what Britain means. British means Brit is covenant, Ish is man. So the British are covenant men. So the name of the covenant is on your nation, and the name of the covenant is also on Great Britain, from which have sprung Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, believe it or not, and many, many other nations. Some 60 nations have been birthed by Great Britain through her great empire. And Israel was one of them. The state of Israel was birthed by Great Britain. And then, of course, they messed it up, but they started in a very beautiful way with the establishment of a state for the Jewish people. That was a British idea, and there was the 70th anniversary recently. So let's go on to the next slide. Oh, I see. How did that happen? I've got to go this way. That's it. Now, Abraham's wife, Sarah, she was to be a mother of nations. And this is a scripture that's often forgotten. It says, I will bless her and also give you a son by her, and then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. That's Jacob's blessing on Judah. And your house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever. That's the throne of King David. For thus says the Lord, David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel. Thus says the Lord, if you can break my covenant with the day, my covenant with the night, so that there will be not day and night in their season, then my covenant may also be broken with David, my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign on his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my ministers, as the host of heaven cannot be numbered, nor the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the descendants of David, my servant, and the Levites who minister to me. Jehovah calls in the above witnesses from nature itself to establish, underline, and confirm his covenant with King David of Israel. Well, last time I looked, we still have a day. It's day to day. Tonight there will be a night, and the sun and the moon and those servants in the sky, they are still carrying on. And so here we are. There's a promise that is an immutable, irrevocable promise that David's throne will continue forever. And the final word is again given in the promise and the words that Jacob spoke over Judah until Shiloh the Messiah comes. So there is in the world today a person who is a lineal descendant of King David ruling over an actual throne, and that person or that person's descendant has to hand over the crown and the throne to Mashiach ben David when he comes to establish his kingdom here on the earth. So that's an irrevocable promise. And so if we're going to find that if we want to verify this promise, we need to find that throne. And this is what we're going to do now. Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever like the moon and like the faithful witness in the sky. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of Jehovah or Sabaoth will perform this. Isaiah chapter 9 verses 5 to 6. Now, Queen Elizabeth I of England acknowledged the temporary nature of her crown, as she once stated, "I wish I could be alive when Christ, the Messiah, returns, because I would like to be the first monarch to take my crown and lay it at his feet." So that lady has been ruling over the United Kingdom for I don't know how long. She is 91 now, and she is as fit as a flea. You know, she's never really been ill. Spot of flu maybe, but nothing serious. And she could go on for another 10, 15, 20 years. Her mother lived to 102. And she seems a lot fitter than her mother. She can stand at a reception for 5 hours. I got sciatica. She doesn't. I can't stand for 5 hours, but she can. And she has this extraordinary fitness about her. And she seems to be growing in stature as she gets older. So she is a lineal descendant of King David. She is number 121. She is the 121st lineal descendant of King David. And this is confirmed by the heraldic authorities in the City of London. And I have a chart at home that actually gives the lineage from Queen Elizabeth II, actually, isn't she's the second Elizabeth, right from King David all the way down the various lines, and until it gets to her. Now, Abraham's wife, Sarah, was to be a mother of nations. I think we've done this slide, haven't we? Yeah. It's an important one because not many people realize that Sarah, who only had one son, Isaac, that she was going through Isaac to be a mother of nations. Not one nation. People today think that the Jews are all there is to Israel, right? But they should read this scripture, that Sarah is going to be a mother of nations. Abraham was a father of nations, and he was the father of the faithful. And so, you know, the question is, where are Sarah's nations today? The prophecy is, she'll be a mother of many, many nations. Where are they? Who are they? And maybe we'll find out some more as we go on. Now, what happened then? You know about the Babylonians who invaded Israel and who took the king Zedekiah captive. And they collected all his relatives and all his sons, and anyone related to the lineage of David was collected. King Zedekiah was put there, and all his sons were killed in front of his eyes. Enormously cruel. And then after all his sons and male relatives had been killed, he had his eyes put out, and then he was taken in chains to Babylon, where he died in a Babylonian dungeon. He was the last king of Judah. Israel and Judah had already parted friends nearly 200 and something years before. And in fact, no, it was not two, it was 500 years before. And Israel had already, the northern nation of Israel had already been taken captive by the Assyrians, the fearful Assyrians. The Assyrians had been defeated by the Babylonians, and now the Babylonians were in Jerusalem, and they killed Zedekiah, no, they imprisoned Zedekiah, killed all his relatives and sons, and the temple they destroyed, the city they pretty much wiped out. Now, was that the end of the line of Judah? Did that mean that the word we just seen, the prophecies we've just read about the sun and the moon and the sea and so forth, always being there as long as David's descendants sit on the throne of Israel? So in 2 Kings 25 verse 6 to 7, so they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and they pronounced judgment on him, and then they killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in bronze fetters, and took him to Babylon. The king of Babylon was convinced that he had rooted out and destroyed the throne of David and the house of David, and that was his plan. With all the male heirs to the throne of David slain, was God promised to King David broken? No, of course not. Was there no one left to inherit that throne? King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon would not have been aware of the laws of Israel, which in certain circumstances allowed for female succession of an inheritance. The very thought would have been completely inconceivable to him, as females of the royal line of Babylon would never be considered for rulership or government. Just as in Saudi Arabia, you will never see a female ruler in Saudi Arabia. It's the same in Babylon. And in most nations, it's inconceivable that a female person should rule the nation. That is just not acceptable. The very idea of female succession was reprehensible to all of the male-dominated pagan societies surrounding the land of Israel at the time. Nevertheless, in the book of Numbers, God instructed Moses, "If a man dies and have no son, then you shall cause his inheritance to pass unto his daughters." And this divine ruling has become known as the law of Zelophehad. Zelophehad, difficult word, but that's the law, and whereby a woman may inherit a throne when there is no male heir. And this is in direct contrast to the Salic law operating on the European mainland, such as France and Germany. You never see a female king or ruler in Germany or France. Well, you've got a female ruler, Mrs. Merkel, but she doesn't sit on a throne, right? Not a royal throne. So this code of laws of the Salian Franks and other Germanic tribes specifically excludes women from royal succession. And it's no coincidence that in Great Britain, as well as in the Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries, the ancient laws of Israel applies, as in all these kingdoms a queen may reign in her own right. And some of Britain's greatest monarchs have been queens. The big question now is, did Zedekiah, the last king of Judah, have any daughters? Now we see in Jeremiah chapter 43 and verse 6 a mention of the king's daughters. And the prophet here relates how he and Baruch, his scribe and secretary, were traveling with them to Egypt. So there is Jeremiah traveling with the king's daughter and his secretary to Egypt. And the prophet Ezekiel prophesied that the throne of David would be overthrown no less than 3 times. And he gave this prophecy in Ezekiel 21, verse 25 to 27. "And thou profane and wicked prince of Israel, whose day is come, when iniquity shall have found an end. Thus says the Lord God, remove the diadem, and take off the crown. This shall not be the same. Exalt him that is low, and abase him that is high. I will overturn it, and it shall be no more, until he come whose right it is, and I will give it to him. So the throne of Judah is going to be, the crown is going to be taken off Judah's head, and it's going to be given to a ruler in Israel. Israel didn't have a crown. They were the one who was abased. And in fact, they had been taken captive, and nobody really knew where they were, right? But God knows everything, you know that. And so he was going to give the crown to those who were abased in Israel, and take it from Judah's head and give it to a scion of David, a descendant of David, in Israel, amongst the 10 tribes. And so, remove the diadem, take off the crown, this shall not be the same, exalt him that is low, and abase him that is high. So Judah is to be abased, as history itself testifies to the fact that from here on she has ceased to be ruled by lineal descendants of David. Thus it is Israel that has to be exalted. Henceforth it is Israel that will be ruled by the royal descendants of David. I will overturn it, and it shall be no more, until he come whose right it is. That's the Messiah, that is Mashiach ben David. And what was to be overturned? It is the diadem, the crown, the throne that is to be overturned. Not just once, but is to be overturned 3 times. So now we're looking for a royal dynasty, descendants of King David, where there have been these 3 overturns. Bit of detective work, if you like. Here is a coronation chair, that is the official coronation chair of Great Britain, of England, and inside the coronation chair you have a stone, and that stone was the shepherd's stone of Israel. It was the pillar stone of Jacob, and all the kings of Judah were crowned on that stone. And you find, if you search hard enough, you find the scriptures to prove that the king being crowned stood by a pillar. Well, that's the pillar that Jacob set up after he went to his uncle Laban, having seen the vision of the ladder from heaven with angels ascending and descending on that ladder, and seeing Jehovah above and giving him a special word. And so that is that stone. And in the scriptures, that stone is called the shepherd's stone of Israel. Now, and you'll find that in the blessing on Joseph in Genesis 49. So, because the shepherd's stone of Israel is mentioned in connection with Jacob's blessing on Joseph, that means that Joseph is going to be responsible for that stone. And of course, the stone is called the shepherd's stone of Israel. And what has a shepherd got to do? A shepherd always has to go with his flock. And the Joseph people are, you know where the Joseph people end up. We'll talk some more about that. But wherever that stone is, that's where the people of Joseph are. Wherever that throne is, that's where the people of Joseph are. Do you see what I mean? So, now, the first overturn was from Jerusalem to Tara. Here, this island there, Tara, in Ireland. Tara was the royal capital of Ireland at the time, and it was ruled by a scion, a descendant of David, whose name was Eochaid, and he's from the Zerah line of David. And you know, you remember the birth of the two sons, the 2 royal sons, that were born to Judah by his wife, the wife that he didn't want to take, but through circumstances he was made to take her. And the Sarah came out first. Sarah put out her hand, his hand, and the midwife put a red cord around that hand. But then the hand was withdrawn, and then Phares came out, and the midwife commented on it that he was a bit pushy, Phares. It describes the Jews very well, I think. And she made a prophecy over the two royal children, the two boys. And she said, she prophesied that one day the two lines would be reunited. And of course that's happened in Tara, in Ireland. And it was Jeremiah who traveled to Egypt, and he got to one of Pharaoh's palaces, which is called Tahpanhes. I've seen a picture of the ruins, and the Arabs in the neighborhood referred to that palace as the palace of the king's daughters. And the king's daughters are those two girls that Jeremiah took there, the two daughters of Zedekiah. From there, via Spain, he ended up in Ireland, ended up in Tara. And he took with him this pillar stone, and he took with him the harp of David. And because of that, the harp of David has become the symbol of Ireland today. And in fact, the beer that they brew in Ireland, you know, Guinness beer, has got the harp of David on every bottle, right? And so that explains that heritage. So here we have a picture of the actual coronation chair in Westminster Abbey in Great Britain, in London. And it was prophesied that Jacob's pillar stone would be overturned 3 times before returning back to the land of Israel. So Jacob's pillar stone moved from the kingdom of Judah to Ireland in Tara. Now I believe that Tara is a synonym for Torah. And there's in the Irish Chronicles, I can't pronounce what they're called because it's in Gaelic, it's a very difficult name, but the Irish Chronicles record that there was a prophet who came, and this prophet brought the princess, and the princess married their prince or their king, and thus the king was from the line of Zerah from Judah, and the girl was from the line of Phares, and the two lines were reunited. So Jacob's pillar stone moved from the kingdom of Judah to Ireland in Tara, and there it was overturned and went to Scotland in Scone, which was an abbey, the Abbey of Scone. And all the kings of Ireland were crowned on that pillar stone, Jacob's pillar stone. For 1,000 years, the kings of Ireland were crowned on that stone. Then the stone moved to Scotland, and for 500 years, all the kings of Scotland were crowned on that stone. Then the stone moved to London, 3rd time. 3 times it moved, and all the kings of England were crowned on it. You see? So for nearly 1,000 years. So that covers, you know, the Babylonian invasion was about 556 or 64 or something. So that covers 2,500 years. And it's perfectly covered in the genealogy of the royal kings of Ireland, and the royal kings of Scotland, and the royal kings of England. So it matches perfectly. But there are many more signs that we will show. Elizabeth II, she is the temporary custodian of the throne of David. It doesn't belong to her. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to our Father in heaven, and he decides who sits on it. So the Queen of Great Britain holds the crown by divine stewardship. She is merely the present-day custodian of God's promise to King David, as she possesses both the scepter and the crown, until he comes whose right it is. And he is coming, we know. Hopefully, he won't be long. So here we have the crown, and this is the coronation crown of England. And all the kings and queens of England have been crowned with this crown. It's called the St. Edward's crown. And it is a magnificent crown, and there's a whole story behind it, and a story that is never told, and a story that almost nobody knows. It's edited out. It is buried, right? I'm going to show you the story of this crown. Basically, this crown is in design is meant to copy or be a representation of the camp of Israel. You remember the camp of Israel? Basically, that sort of a shape. It might have been that shape, but whatever shape it is, we know in the north you had the tribe of Dan, who was ruling the brigade of Dan. In the east you had Judah, ruling the brigade of Judah. And their standards, the standard of Dan and the standard of Judah, were higher than those of the other tribes either side of them. Judah had Issachar and Zebulun either side of him. So Judah's standard would be higher because he was the head of the Judah brigade. Dan was the head of the Dan brigade. Dan was in the north, Judah was in the east, Ephraim was in the west with Manasseh and Benjamin, and then you had Reuben in the south. And then, of course, in another passage in Ezekiel, our Father God mentions that he has four faces. He has the face of a man, he has the face of an ox, he has the face of a lion, and he has the face of an eagle. And so those are the emblems of the brigade heads. Now this crown has four raised arches. And these arches, those four arches, represent the four brigades of the camp of Israel. And then the base of the crown is surrounded by 12 stones, by 12 jewels. Now the people who are experts in this field, and I'm not one of them, they have found that 7 of those jewels match those in the breastplate of the high priest. The chosen mishpat of the high priest contains 12 stones. And this crown has 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel, which were surrounding the camp of Israel. And then you see that atop the raised arches, the four raised arches representing the brigades of Israel, you have an orb, a golden orb, which represents the world. And then atop that golden orb is a cross, which represents our future king, the future King of Kings of Israel. It represents our Messiah, Mashiach ben David. And so this crown is just something else, and people don't know it. People don't understand it, which is just such a shame. Now, before a coronation of a new king in England, there is a procedure, and the jewels are kept in the jewel house in the Tower of London. And on the evening prior to the coronation, this crown is taken out of the jewel room and put in under armed escort and driven to the house of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Well, it's a palace actually, and which is adjacent to the Westminster Abbey, where all coronations take place. And the bishop's palace is like the house of the high priest, the palace of the high priest. He is the head of the Church of England. And so this crown is placed there in a special room. And this is a picture of that room. And that room is called the Jerusalem Chamber. Isn't it fitting that the crown which represents the whole house of Israel, the crown which represents the camp of Israel, and in fact also the millennial kingdom of Israel, with, if you consider that Yeshua is on top of it, and Israel is going to rule the whole world through Israel. And that crown is placed on that table under armed guard overnight. And then it is taken from the Jerusalem chamber, it's taken into the Jericho parlor. And you know, the Israelites, our ancestors, entered the land by Jericho, right? Across the Jordan in that area. And so from the Jerusalem chamber, this crown representing the whole house of Israel, the camp of Israel, is taken on a velvet cushion in procession by those priests and prelates through the Jericho parlor. And from the Jericho parlor, there is a room that connects directly into the Westminster Abbey. And the Abbey represents the temple, if you like. And there is a side door. So if you were to come out of the next room, you'd be opening a door that leads directly to another door that opens the door to the temple or the Westminster Abbey. But this crown is so holy, it's not allowed to go through that room, because that room is called the Canaan room. And we can't mix this crown with any Canaanites, can we? So they take this crown on its velvet cushion outside the Jericho parlor into an open courtyard, and the crown is open to wind and rain and whatever the weather is providing on the day, and is taken in procession to the east door of the Abbey. Has to be the eastern door, right? And the eastern door is a very, very long passageway, very, very high, monumental high roof. And if you've ever been there, it's just the most magnificent cathedral you can imagine. And so it's taken in procession very slowly towards the high altar, which is a long way away. And as that crown is taken in procession, you see the west window above. And the west window is something else, because it's glass inlaid. It's a very ancient window. And in this window you have Abraham, a picture in full color of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then you have all of Jacob's sons in order of birth, etc. And so that is that window. So there's the first row, and then the second row, and then I think there's a third row, and then at the end of Jacob's family you have Moses and Aaron. All in full glory, you know, and with the sun on it, fantastic. It looks fantastic. And so this crown is being walked towards this window. And then it is put on the altar. The crown is put on the altar. And then we saw the picture of Her Majesty the Queen. She sits in the coronation chair. And there she is crowned by her bishops and her attendants, etc. Or underneath a chuppah, by the way, underneath a chuppah. And she is anointed with oil. Most of the kings in Europe are not anointed with oil, but in Britain she's anointed with oil. And all the traditions of the coronation service of the kings of England and the queens of England are taken from the coronation service of Solomon. Even the songs, Zadok the priest, they sing, and so forth. Everything is pointing to Israel, the origin of the nation, the origin of the kingdom and the royal dynasty. Everything points back to Israel, where it originated. Isn't that incredible? I always find it incredible. Here's the west window. You can't see it terribly clearly on this slide, but you want to see it. I mean, it is as high as this room, higher than this room, the window. So it's high impact when you get close to it. Now, the amazing thing is that I made an appointment with Lord Michael Allenby in the House of Lords, and I wanted to bring in my own photographer to the House of Lords and take some photographs. And I think it was a divine appointment because, you know, it's my idea to do that and just ring him up. But he was at the other end of the phone and he was willing to listen, and he said yes. So I call that a divine appointment, don't you?
Explain who he is for those that don't know the history behind his grandfather.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. But, you know, I say it was my idea. It wasn't my idea. The idea came to me, and we know where it came from. I know where it came from. So one of the paintings I took, and I was so blessed by this, was the picture of the Moses Room in the House of Lords. And the British Parliament is the only parliament in the world that actually has a Moses Room. And this is a painting of Moses coming down the mountain, bringing the law, you know, and it says he's bringing it to the Israelites. And it is just a beautiful painting, and it's as large as the end wall when you come in, so it really hits you. They also have a marvelous painting here about Daniel preaching in Babylon. Again, a painting larger than that garage door, you know. And so it's quite amazing to have a Moses Room. They haven't got one in the Knesset in Jerusalem. I do know, though, that in the Senate or the Congress, they have a very large painting or sculpture of Moses, the lawgiver, in the Congress when you walk through the passageways. I hope to be able to get in there myself with a photographer to take a picture of it. But maybe we'll have to wait for that. Now here we have the Queen's throne in the Parliament at Westminster, the Palace of Westminster, and this is her royal robing room. So she has that, and it's not a little room, it's a huge room, it's bigger than this, and it's longer than this, maybe not quite as wide. And this throne here shows the lion and the unicorn of the arms of Great Britain. And I may get a close-up later and explain the meaning of these arms. But there is a fascinating thing I discovered. I never knew it was there. Because there's marquetry flooring around the throne. And there are these squares in the marquetry. And you see that every square is filled with the Star of David. Well, why is the Star of David around the throne of the Queen of England? Why? I mean, it's not just been there for her reign, but many reigns before. There's a Star of David, and it's all the way around, this away, and that away, and that away. All around. The whole throne is surrounded by the Stars of David. And inside the Stars of David, you've got the symbol of the Tudor rose. Now, this symbol, the Tudor rose, has only 10 petals. And the Tudor rose is a royal symbol for the 10 tribes of Israel, hence the 10 petals. But the Rose of Sharon has got 12 petals, and this is for the whole house of Israel. And in front of her throne, she's got 12 petals on every one of these symbols inside the Magen David. And then the other symbol there is a variation. It's not exact. It's a variation of the breastplate of the high priest. And in fact, the breastplate of the high priest is a symbol of the British Parliament. Now that's extraordinary, isn't it? All the chairs in Parliament have the breastplate of the high priest at the back of them. In the House of Lords, they're red. In the House of Commons, they're green. And so everything there is telling you, we are Israel. And nobody understands it and nobody knows it. Maybe a few people, but I mean, everyone should know it, don't you think? It should be taught at school and all this. But it isn't. This is the gated entrance to the House of Lords. And you've got all these emblems, and I haven't really got time to explain them all, but I'll get to it later perhaps. Now here we have a close-up of the Queen's throne in the House of Lords. And you have two angels, or archangels, in gold, either side of the throne. And then all the symbolism is about Israel. And we'll get clearer pictures for you to look at. Now, when the Queen opens Parliament, she usually has her husband by her side. So we got two thrones. And then she reads the program for Parliament in the following year. And the government writes it for her. And she just has the ceremonial function of reading it. And for that she needs the robing room to be robed for the function. It's only used once a year. And there are the archangels either side in gold, and there's the coat of arms above the throne, and the coat of arms has on this side a unicorn, on that side a lion. The lion is upright like that, and the unicorn is also upright like that. And the interesting thing is that the unicorn is chained to the ground, and the lion is freestanding. And the unicorn has got a golden band around its neck, very ornate with fleur-de-lis around it. And then a golden chain is attached to it, and she or he is chained to the ground. So the unicorn can't leave. The unicorn is still in captivity, but the Lion of Judah is free. Isn't that amazing? And so we'll look some more at some other material. And this is the Parliament building. It's like a type of a Sanhedrin. And the Westminster Abbey is like the temple. The palace of the high, the head of the Archbishop of Canterbury is like the palace of the high priest. And you know, the Levites were in charge of the government, and they had their buildings, bureaucratic buildings. So on this side you have all the Whitehall, and all main government buildings are there in Whitehall. And so the whole structure of the Abbey, the Parliament, the palace of the high priest, well, he's not a high priest, but you know what I mean, and then all the Levitical buildings of government, the whole of that city of Westminster is built on the lines of the temple complex in Jerusalem. Isn't that extraordinary? Why would they do that? Why would they? I mean, the Westminster Abbey is nearly 1,000 years old. Why would they do that? You see what I mean? And then you have the palace, Buckingham Palace, you know, located over there to the right, just north of the Parliament. So it's just extraordinary. Even the arms of Westminster give you an indication of the breastplate of the high priest. They give you the Tudor roses with their 10 petals in red and in white. You have two Lions of Judah there, and it says the custody civitatem Domini. So the custody of the city is in the hands of Jehovah. And so it's quite extraordinary when you realize this. You know, the amazing thing is in this Westminster area, which is about the same size as the temple complex, 36 acres, surrounded by the Thames on this side, by a canal on that side, and a little stream. And so it is just like the temple complex. It's separate from the city. And even the toilets in Westminster have the arms of the high priest and the Lions of Judah either side, and the Tudor roses in the middle. Even the toilets, a carved plaque of the coat of arms of Westminster. And you know, it's exactly like it was in the temple complex in Jerusalem, because every gate leading to that complex had the arms of the Levi, the high priest. Whatever gate you went into, the arms of Levi marked it as a sacred complex. And then every building had the arms of the high priest. Now, here you have an officer's sword. The officers in the British Army for several centuries are commissioned by the Queen or by the King. And their sword is a symbol of their commission, because they carry their commission in the name of the King or in the name of the Queen, who is the head of state. And every sword of every British soldier who is an officer class soldier has the Magen David, the Star of David, just below the hilt on his sword. And that's been going on for over 200 years. And I discovered, I was interested whether America had the same tradition, but there's only one group of soldiers who are given a sword, and that's the Marines. And the Marine sword, all the Marine sword also have the Magen David just below the hilt. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is that so? Why do that? This intrinsically Israel symbol. Why put it on the sword of a Marine? Why put it on the sword of a British soldier if it doesn't have any meaning? There are the gates of Buckingham Palace, and you see the Lion of Judah on the left, you see the unicorn of Israel on the right. On top you see a lion en passant, sideways, and this lion is standing on a crown. That apparently, I understand, was the personal symbol of King David himself. So that is on the royal regalia and the royal arms of Great Britain. That is King David's personal emblem. Because King David was from the tribe of Judah, but he couldn't use the emblem of the tribe, which is this upright lion. And so he had to come up with something else. So David's line is sideways, on all fours, and he's standing on a crown. So that's how David distinguished his lineage from the lineage of Judah, the tribe. And you also have a Canada gate around Buckingham Palace. There's all these gates with these great symbols. And that's the Canada gate, where you have an ox, which is Ephraim, on that gate. Here we have the funeral of the Queen Mother, which I was privileged to attend. And you see, on top of the funeral, there is her crown. And you see, I don't know if you see it close up, but this crown has got the fleur-de-lis on it. You can see the fleur-de-lis, can't you? You know, put your glasses on. I promise you it's there. Now the fleur-de-lis, and you know, I really couldn't place the fleur-de-lis at all. I had placed pretty well all of the heraldic images that came from the words of Jacob and the words of Moses. Jacob spoke them in Genesis 49. Moses spoke them over the tribes in Deuteronomy 33. And all I did is collate those words to try and find the tribes, because they were addressed to individual tribes. And the individual tribes adopted those words as their emblems, their personal emblems. And so here we have the fleur-de-lis, which is a foremost royal emblem. All the kings that are still there, and all the queens that are still there, of the royalties of Europe, they all have got the fleur-de-lis. And the French, when they had kings, the fleur-de-lis was their ultimate symbol of royalty. And so here we have the fleur-de-lis on the crown of the Queen Mother. And so when I was there, I wanted to know, where does that one come from? Why is that one there? And so I didn't know, and I didn't know where to look or what to do, so I prayed, and I asked Father to show me, where does that fleur-de-lis come from? What does it mean? And so forth. And I prayed, and I was not getting an answer. And I prayed for 2 months, maybe even a bit longer. And I was asking him, please, Father, it's the one that's, I need to know this one. Anyway, one day I was reading the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew, and then I had the eureka moment, because there it was, worry not about what you shall eat or what you shall wear. Look at Solomon. Look at the lilies of the field. Lilies of the field. Even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. And I thought, Solomon, the fleur-de-lis comes from Solomon. So then I went to my concordance and I found 14 references to lilies, the fleur-de-lis. And 13 were about Solomon, or were connected with Solomon directly, whether it was in the Song of Solomon, or whether it was when he built the temple, or whatever. 13 apply to Solomon. And 13 is a very, very special number. And we're going to go in that later. It's a sacred number. And the 14th was about Israel. So I thought 13, Solomon, 1, Israel. Well, Solomon was king of Israel, but the fleur-de-lis belongs to Solomon. So I believe that the fleur-de-lis was Solomon's personal seal. And, you know, that's why all royalty have adopted the fleur-de-lis, especially in the West. And you find it in every one of their crowns. Also the coronation crown of England. You have a large cross, a bejeweled cross, alternating a golden fleur-de-lis. And it goes all the way around the crown. Now, talking about the triple lines of Judah, every one of the children of Israel shall camp by his own standard, and besides the emblems of his father's house. So the children of Israel were really into heraldry. They were really into standards. Everyone had their standard. Every family had their standard. Every tribe had their standard. You see? They're really into it. And that's Numbers 2:2. And they shall camp some distance from the tabernacle of meeting. And Judah, this is the blessing of Jacob. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion. And as a lion, who shall rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, and so forth. So there you have 3 mentions of a lion in Jacob's blessing on Judah. So that's why the lion is a symbol of Judah. But when you look at the British coat of arms and the Danish coat of arms, they got triple lions on that coat of arms, which also a reference to Judah and also a reference to David. The original of the heraldic symbols of the 12 tribes of Israel are found in the words that Jacob spoke on his deathbed as he addressed his 12 sons. And Moses too addressed each of the 12 tribes of Israel just prior to his death. And here you have the Lion's Gate in Jerusalem. And those little lions are carved out in stone on the Lion's Gate. And they're the lions, the part of the triple lions of Judah, and that's why it's called the Lion's Gate. Here you have a window showing the lion and the unicorn in the Palace of Westminster. So this is in the parliamentary complex. You find these kind of windows. And there's the Lion of Judah on that side with the flower representing the 10 tribes of Israel. And on this side you've got the unicorn, and I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but the unicorn's got this golden band, and there is a chain that goes down the bottom, and he's tied to the ground. Then you have triple lines of Judah in this quarter, triple lines of Judah in the top left quarter. You have a line from the Zerah line of Judah, and you have the harp of King David, and they're the arms of Great Britain. God brought him, Israel, out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, and he shall break their bones and pierce them, through with his arrows. pierced them through with his arrows. He crouched, he lay down as a lion, and as a great lion, who shall stir him? And at the top scripture about the lion and unicorn, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, the bullock being Ephraim, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns, unicorns being Israel. With them he shall push the peoples together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. Now the Jews have never ever pushed the nations to the ends of the earth, but Ephraim and Manasseh have. Only in the last World War, you know, you had the American GIs and you had the British GIs, and they had a badge on their shoulder. And the American GIs had one half of the world on their badge, and the British GIs had the other half. And at the end of the Second World War, they were in charge of the entire globe. Every nation on earth was subject to them, either through occupation or through having delivered them from the Nazi or the Japanese yoke, etc. So yes, they did that. Judah never did that. Another thing Judah never did, whereas Judah preserved the scriptures, it was Joseph, that is the Ephraimite nations, who distributed them all around the world. Because in the days of empire, whenever the British gunboats went out, it's the missionaries who went in their train with the Bible, and they brought the Bible to the four quarters of the earth and preached the gospel, such as it was. But still, people became familiar with the Bible, and as such, a number of them became familiar with the Torah. Now, these are the royal arms of Great Britain. I'll quickly go through that. In a way, we've touched upon them, because we got the triple lines of Judah, we got the lion of the house of Zerah, we got the triple lines of Judah, we got the harp of King David, we got the lion of King David, we got the unicorn of Israel, the lion of Judah, unicorn of Israel, and we got King David's personal emblem, which is a lion en passant on top of a crown. And so this is the arms of Great Britain, and everything about it points us to Israel and King David. And at the bottom it says, Dieu est mon droit, God and my right. It can be loosely translated as God and my birthright. And then the motto says, Honi soit qui mal y pense, which means evil to him who evil thinks. And to me that smacks a little bit of, you know, blessed are you if you bless us. If you bless me, you're blessed, because I'm from Israel. If you bless Israel, you are blessed. If you curse Israel, you're cursed. Evil to him who evil thinks. Honi soit qui mal y pense. So you see, even that motto points to Israel and points to the scriptures. There you have the arms of Judah. Again, the Lion of Judah. Okay? And there you have the arms of Flanders, a lion. There you have the arms of Belgium, 3 lions. There you have the arms of the Netherlands, 3 lions. There you have the arms of Denmark, triple lions of Judah. The arms of Finland, a single lion bearing an axe. The arms of Iceland, they've changed their arms. They haven't got a royal family anymore, but that used to be their arms. And then the arms of Sweden. There are the arms of Finland on the left, the arms of Scotland on the right, which is 2 unicorns, and the line of Zerah in the middle. And then you've got the arms of Luxembourg, 3 lions. Those are all, by the very fact that they portray the symbol of the Lion of Judah, they're all ruled by a descendant of Judah. And they're all Israelite nations. And here's the beauty. This is a beauty. This is a mosaic from a ceiling in a Polish synagogue. So I've taken this from a Polish synagogue where the Lion of Judah, can you see it? The Lion of Judah is blowing the shofar of the unicorn of Israel. Right? It's a triumphant victory picture, this one. And because the Lion of Judah is blown is the horn of the unicorn of Israel, and then you have this flower pot with 4 flowers with the Tudor rose, 4 Tudor roses in there, representing the children of Israel being dispersed to the 4 corners of the earth. And it's from those 4 corners that our Father in heaven is going to bring them back to his land, bring them back to Judah, and there'll be reconciliation in the whole mishpacha of Israel. Hallelujah.